The blue light from the computer screen lit up Hyun's face as his fingers danced across the keyboard. It was 3 a.m., but time meant nothing to him when he was gaming. The empty energy drink cans around his desk told the story of another all-night session. Just one more level, Hyun mumbled to himself, his eyes never leaving the screen. He was Korea's top-ranked player in Survival Arena, a game known for its brutal difficulty. Most players quit after a few deaths, but Hyun had a gift. Pain in games never bothered him. Each failure was just data, something to learn from. As he reached the final boss, something strange happened. His screen flickered, then the lights in his small apartment flickered too. Power surge? Hyun wondered, but kept playing. Nothing would stop him from beating his high score. Then the air around him began to shimmer. Hyun blinked hard, thinking it was just his tired eyes playing tricks, but the shimmer grew brighter until a beam of light surrounded him completely. Cool effects, he said, thinking it was part of his new gaming headset. Very realistic. Then everything went white. His body felt weightless. Hyun thought he was falling asleep at his desk again, until he woke up somewhere else. Dory adjusted the settings on her control panel, her 6-fingered hands moving with precision over the glowing symbols. The specimen chamber was ready. As head researcher for the Kazan Science Division, she had studied 17 different intelligent species, but humans fascinated her the most. "Is the subject secured?" she asked, her voice calm and clinical. Tae, her assistant, nodded. "Yes, lead researcher. The male human is in the holding cell. Brain activity shows he is regaining consciousness." Dory's mouth corners turned upward in what passed for a smile among the Kazan. "Excellent. This one has unusual neural patterns. His brain activity during their gaming was why I selected him. Humans are strange. They voluntarily expose themselves to failure and frustration for entertainment." "Primitive coping mechanisms," Tae suggested, looking at the data on his screen. "They practice stress in safe environments." "Perhaps," Dory said. "But this one is different. When other humans show anger or distress during difficult tasks, this one shows patterns similar to solving complex problems. It's as if he enjoys the pain of failure." Tae looked uncomfortable. "The High Council only gave us permission for standard testing. We must determine if humans are a threat or potential allies." Dory waved her hand dismissively. "And we will. But first, let's see how he handles the initial assessment." Hyun opened his eyes to bright white light. He was lying on a smooth surface that felt neither warm nor cold. The ceiling above was perfectly white, without seams or fixtures. "Hello?" he called out, sitting up slowly. No answer. He wasn't afraid, just confused. The room was a perfect cube, about 5 meters in each direction. No doors, no windows, just seamless white walls. "Interesting design," Hyun said to himself, standing up. He walked to the nearest wall and touched it. The surface felt strange, like nothing he had touched before. Suddenly, a voice spoke. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Human subject 7K39, preliminary assessment will begin shortly." The voice was flat and slightly artificial, like a computer translation. Hyun's eyes widened. "Whoa! Voice acting is excellent. Much better than the last VR game I tested." He thought this must be the new simulation game his sponsor had mentioned last week. Sometimes companies paid top gamers to test their products before release. Yoon must have fallen asleep at his desk, and someone from the game company had set up this VR experience. One of the walls suddenly disappeared, revealing a long corridor. "Please proceed," the voice said. Hyun smiled. "Starting tutorial, huh? Let's see what you've got." He walked confidently into the corridor. It stretched about 50 meters ahead with several turns and obstacles visible. "Human subject will navigate the assessment course. Pain responses will be measured," the voice announced. "Pain responses? Cool haptic feedback," Hyun mumbled. "High-end stuff." As he took his first steps into the corridor, the floor beneath him pulsed with energy. A sharp pain shot through his feet and legs. Most people would have jumped back or cried out. Hyun simply paused, looking down with interest. "Oh, shock damage mechanics. Like in Survival Arena Level 12, he said, nodding appreciatively. The pain was real, more real than any game he'd played before. But Hyun had spent thousands of hours training himself to ignore pain in games. To him, pain was just another game mechanic to be understood and overcome. In the control room, Dory and Tae exchanged confused looks. He should be showing distress, Tae said, checking the monitors. The pain stimulus is set to level 3, enough to cause significant discomfort in most species. Dory leaned forward, watching the human with growing interest. Increased to level 4. Let's see his threshold. On the screens, they watched as Hyun methodically tested the floor ahead of him, placing one foot carefully, then pulling back when he felt pain. He was mapping the pain zones, creating a mental picture of where was safe to step. He's treating it like a puzzle, Dory said, fascination in her voice. When the pain level increased, Hyun merely paused, looked thoughtful, and then continued more carefully. Difficulty spike already? He said out loud, as if talking to game developers. Interesting choice, makes the player more cautious early on. Dory couldn't believe what she was seeing. He thinks this is entertainment, she whispered. Hyun had developed a pattern now, quick steps between pain zones, pausing only briefly when he miscalculated and received a shock. Each time he got hurt, he merely nodded and adjusted his strategy. The floor pattern repeats every 7 panels, he called out loudly. Good design choice. Allows the player to learn but still requires concentration. Tae looked at Dory with concern. Should we stop? This is not the expected response. No, Dory said firmly. This is too valuable. Add the moving walls. With a few commands, sections of the corridor walls began to slide in and out, threatening to push Hyun into the electrified floor sections. Rather than showing fear, Hyun's face lit up. Dynamic obstacles, nice. He began timing his movements, waiting for walls to retract before darting forward. When one wall pushed him onto an electrified section, he grimaced from the pain, but immediately called out, good synergy between mechanics. Forces player decisions under pressure. By the time Hyun reached the end of the corridor, he was covered in sweat, and the monitors showed his pain receptors were firing intensely. Yet his brain scans showed excitement, not distress. As the exit door opened, revealing a rest chamber, Hyun pumped his fist in the air. First level clear, he announced proudly. Good pacing, interesting mechanics. Pain feedback is very realistic, almost too intense for casual gamers. Maybe add difficulty options for the final release. He walked into the rest chamber and looked around expectantly. So what's level 2? In the control room, Dory stared at the screen in silence for a long moment before speaking. Tae, she said quietly, I believe we may need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about humans. Tae nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the screen showing Hyun stretching his arms as if preparing for the next challenge. What the Kazan consider torture, Dory continued. Humans have somehow turned into entertainment. This changes everything, Tae whispered. Yes, Dory agreed, her fingers already programming the next test. And I want to see just how far this human will go before he realizes this is no game. Impossible, Tae muttered, reviewing the data from the first test. No subject has ever completed the pain maze without at least one emotional breakdown. Dory studied the screens showing Hyun sitting calmly in the rest chamber. The human was examining his hands where minor burns had formed from the electrical shocks. Instead of showing distress, he seemed to be analyzing them with interest. His vital signs should not be this stable, Dory said. Heart rate elevated but within normal parameters. Stress hormones present but not at panic levels. Perhaps the human is damaged, Tae suggested. Maybe his pain receptors are faulty? Dory shook her head. No, the readings are clear. He feels the pain. He simply accepts it. She leaned closer to the microphone. Prepare the shifting environment test. Double the normal difficulty. Tae looked alarmed. Double? But lead researcher. That protocol is designed for. I know what it's designed for. Dory cut him off. This human is different. I want to see why. In the rest chamber, Hyun was impressed. Whatever company had made this VR setup had spared no expense. The pain felt real. The environment was completely immersive, and he couldn't even see the usual VR headset edges in his peripheral vision. "Best graphics I've ever seen," he said aloud, hoping the developers were listening to his feedback. And the haptic suit must be top of the line. Those electric shocks felt incredibly realistic. The voice returned, echoing through the chamber. "Human subject 7K39, next assessment will begin in 10 seconds. Hyun stood up, bouncing on his toes like a boxer preparing for a fight. "Ready when you are. Hope the next level is more challenging." Walls around him suddenly began to move. The entire room shifted, walls sliding in unpredictable patterns. The floor beneath him tilted sharply, nearly causing him to fall. "Whoa!" Hyun exclaimed, quickly regaining his balance. "Dynamic environment. Very cool mechanic." As the room continued to reshape itself, openings would briefly appear in the walls before closing again. Hyun quickly realized this was a timing puzzle. He needed to move through the openings at precisely the right moment. "I see the pattern," he called out as if giving tips to invisible viewers. "You have to watch the corner sections first. They show where the next opening will be." He began moving with the room's shifts, timing his dashes through gaps that appeared and disappeared within seconds. When he miscalculated and a closing wall caught his arm, pinching it painfully, he simply winced and pulled free. Damage penalty for wrong moves. "Nice touch. Makes players more careful," he commented, examining the bruise forming on his arm. In the control room, Dory and Tae watched with growing amazement. "He's analyzing the randomized pattern," Tae said in disbelief. "That's not supposed to be possible. We designed it to be unpredictable."
"It seems unpredictable means something different to humans," Dory replied. "Add the temperature variations. Let's see how he handles multiple stress factors." Suddenly, the air in the chamber turned freezing cold. Hyun's breath became visible
as ice crystals formed on the walls. Just as quickly, sections of the floor began to glow red with heat. Hyun's eyes widened. Environmental hazards. This game has everything. He hopped from one safe spot to another, avoiding both the freezing walls and the burning floor sections. When his foot touched a hot panel, he pulled back with a hiss of pain, but immediately incorporated the new information into his strategy. "Hot. Spots appear 3 seconds after the panels turn red," he called out. "Good warning system for players." As he navigated the constantly changing room, Hyun began naming the different hazards he encountered. "That's a crusher, that's a burner, and that's definitely a freezer," he said cheerfully, despite the sweat freezing on his forehead. "Classical elements, fire and ice." When he finally reached what appeared to be an exit, a small opening just large enough for a human to crawl through, he didn't hesitate. He dove, headfirst into the dark tunnel, emerging in another white room. "He's raiding our torture chamber," Tae said, his voice a mixture of horror and fascination, as if it were some form of, entertainment product. Dory nodded slowly. "More than that. He's not just enduring it. He's optimizing his path through it. Look at his last run through the shifting section. He improved his time by 30%. Should we inform the High Council?" Tae asked nervously. "Not yet," Dory replied. "I want to try something first. Activate the sensory deprivation sequence, but with a twist. Add random sensory spikes." The room Hyun found himself in was different. It was completely dark and silent. So silent he could hear his own heartbeat. Slowly, even that faded away, as the room seemed to absorb all sound. "Stealth level?" Hyun whispered, but couldn't even hear his own voice. Or maybe a puzzle based on other senses. He began to move forward carefully, arms outstretched. The floor felt the same as before, but without any visual or audio cues, he had no way to know what dangers might lie ahead. Suddenly, a deafening noise blasted around him, a sound so loud and jarring it felt like a physical blow. Just as quickly, it stopped, leaving him in silence again. Hyun stumbled but didn't fall. "Audio shock mechanics, like horror games." He laughed, despite the ringing in his ears. "Very effective. Next came a blinding flash of light that seared his retinas, followed by return to total darkness. Rather than panicking at the disorientation, Hyun began counting between events. 3 seconds between audio and visual, he mumbled to himself. There must be a pattern. As he continued forward, the sensory attacks came faster. Sounds, lights, sudden cold, bursts of heat. But instead of breaking down, Hyun began to anticipate them, moving in rhythm with the assaults. It's like a dance game, he called out, timing his movements between sensory blasts. Right, left, duck, pause, right again. When he reached the other side of the room, finding another door with his hands, he was grinning broadly despite the sweat pouring down his face and the trembling in his limbs. Great level design, he shouted into the darkness. The difficulty curve is perfect, challenging but fair. Dory stared at the monitor in stunned silence. How did he navigate that? She finally asked. Even with the pattern, he should have been completely disoriented. He created a mental map, Tae said, looking at the brain activity readings. See these spikes? He's counting steps, creating markers, building a framework in his mind. What? Is this human? Dory wondered aloud. I've never seen cognitive adaptation like this. There's more, Tae added. Look at these pleasure center activations. Every time he solves a problem or survives a hazard, his brain releases reward chemicals. He's actually enjoying this. Dory sat back in her chair. Humans play games, yes? Activities with artificial challenges and rules. According to our research, yes, Tae confirmed. I believe, Dory said slowly, that this human thinks our tests are some kind of game. A voluntary challenge designed for entertainment. But that's absurd, Tae exclaimed. Why would any species create pain and fear for entertainment? I don't know, Dory admitted. But I intend to find out. She leaned forward and adjusted the controls. Prepare the social stress test, but this time let's add something new. A fake companion. When Hyun emerged into a brightly lit room, he was surprised to see another person there. A young woman, with short black hair wearing the same simple gray clothes he had on. Hello? He called out cautiously. Are you another tester? The woman looked up, her face showing relief and fear. Oh, thank goodness. I've been trapped here for days. My name is Jin. What is this place? Who are these people? Hyun smiled. This must be an NPC, a non-player character programmed to add story to the game. The graphics were incredible. She looked completely real. I'm Hyun, he replied. And don't worry, this is just a new VR game I'm testing. The effects are amazing, right? Almost feels real. Jin stared at him like he was crazy. Game? This isn't a game. These aliens abducted me from my apartment in Busan. They've been running horrible tests. We need to escape. Hyun nodded appreciatively. Wow, your dialogue is very convincing. The developers really went all out on the story elements. He walked around the room examining the walls for hidden doors or clues while Jin watched him with growing desperation. What are you doing? She cried. We need to find a way out before they come back. Hyun smiled at her. That's exactly what I'm doing. Looking for the next level entrance. Don't worry, I've got 3 lives left at least. I'll help you complete the mission too. In the control room, Dory watched the interaction with fascination. He thinks the AI construct is part of the game, she said. Even direct information about his situation isn't breaking the illusion. This could be useful, Tae suggested. If we can't break him with physical challenges, perhaps emotional ones will work. Dory finished his thought. Yes. Let's see how he handles watching his friend suffer. She typed a command into her console, her 6 fingers moving swiftly over the symbols. Let the real test begin. Please, you have to believe me, Jin pleaded, grabbing Hyun's arm. This isn't a game. Those creatures, they've been doing terrible things to people they bring here. Hyun patted her hand gently. Your acting is really good. The emotion feels very real. Jin's eyes filled with tears. Because it is real. Before Hyun could respond, a panel opened in the wall. Cold air rushed into the room as a new corridor appeared, this one filled with a thin layer of mist along the floor. Ooh, fog effects, Hyun said appreciatively. Very atmospheric. The now familiar voice announced. Subjects will proceed to cooperation test. Jin backed away from the opening. No, not again. I can't do another test. Hyun studied the corridor with interest. Co-op mode activated. This must be where we work together. He turned to Jin with an encouraging smile. Don't worry, I'm really good at team challenges. Just follow my lead. Jin shook her head frantically. The last person they put me with, they didn't make it. Game over, huh? Hyun said sympathetically. Well, this time you have a pro gamer with you. Come on, the level won't start until we both enter. He held out his hand to her. After a moment's hesitation, Jin took it, her fingers trembling. In the control room, Dory watched the interaction with growing fascination. The emotional connection is forming despite his misunderstanding, she noted. This could be useful. His protective instincts are activating, Tae agreed, pointing to a spike in Hyun's hormone levels. The AI construct is serving its purpose. Dory's evil fingers moved across her control panel. Begin the predator simulation. As Hyun and Jin entered the misty corridor, the door sealed shut behind them. The light was dim, with an eerie blue glow coming from strips along the floor. Classic horror game lighting, Hyun commented. We should watch for jump scares. Jin stayed close to him, constantly looking over her shoulder. They always send something after us. Something horrible. A boss fight already? Hyun sounded pleased. Usually those come at the end of levels. They walked deeper into the corridor, which widened into a larger chamber. The mist was thicker here, making it hard to see more than a few meters ahead. Suddenly, a low growling sound echoed through the chamber. Jin froze. It's here, she whispered, her voice shaking. What kind of enemy is it? Hyun asked, looking around calmly. It hunts by sound and movement. If you run, it catches you. Stealth mechanics, then, Hyun nodded. We need to move slowly and stay quiet. The growling grew louder. Through the mist, a shape began to form, something large, moving on all fours, with a fluid, predatory grace. That's some high-quality monster design, Hyun whispered appreciatively. As the creature came closer, its features became clearer. It had 6 limbs, a long reptilian body, and a head with multiple glowing eyes. Its mouth opened to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. Jin was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Hyun put a steadying arm around her shoulders. It's okay, he whispered. Just think of it like a puzzle. We need to get from here to the exit without triggering its attack animation. How can you be so calm? Jin hissed. Hyun smiled. I've played scarier games than this. The creature stopped, lifting its head to sniff the air. It turned slowly in their direction. Don't move, Hyun breathed. Wait for the patrol pattern to reset. Sure enough, after a tense moment, the creature turned away, continuing its circuit of the room. See? Standard AI behavior, Hyun whispered. Now let's watch its route and find the safe path. He's analyzing the predator simulation as if it were following programmed patterns, Tae said, watching the monitors with disbelief. Because that's what games do, Dory replied thoughtfully. They create the illusion of danger within safe parameters. But our simulation isn't safe. That creature will cause real pain if it catches them. Yet he treats it as if it has rules and limitations, Dory said. And by doing so, he's actually identifying the patterns we built into the simulation. She studied the screen showing Hyun carefully guiding Jin through the mist, timing their movements to avoid the creature's attention. Increase difficulty, she ordered. Add the toxic environment layer. As Hyun and Jin made their way across the chamber, a new announcement came. Warning, atmospheric contamination beginning. Exposure will cause increasing damage. The mist around them began to change color, taking on a greenish tint. Poison gas, Hyun said. Now we have a time limit too. Jin began to cough. It burns. My skin. My lungs. Hyun felt it too, a stinging sensation on his exposed skin, a tightness in his chest when he breathed. Impressive effects, he said, though his voice was strained. Really adds pressure to complete the level quickly. The creature, seemingly unaffected by the toxic mist, continued its patrol, but now moved faster, more aggressively. The difficulty curve just spiked, Hyun observed. We need to move more quickly but still avoid detection. Jin's coughing grew worse. I can't breathe. Here, Hyun said, tearing a strip from his sleeve. Cover your mouth with this. As Jin pressed the cloth to her face, Hyun scanned the room. Through the mist, he could just make out a glowing rectangle on the far wall. Exit spotted, he whispered. But the creature is patrolling right in our path. Jin looked at him with tearful eyes. We'll never make it. Hyun's face grew determined. Yes, we will. I see a way. He's discovered the hidden path, Tae said with surprise. Dory leaned forward. That's impossible. We designed that route to be unseeable from their position. Yet he's moving directly toward it. On the screen, Hyun was guiding Jin toward what appeared to be a solid wall, but was actually a narrow passage hidden by a holographic projection. His spatial reasoning is extraordinary, Dory murmured. He's mapping the room in his head and identifying inconsistencies in our design. How did you know this was here? Jin asked as they slipped into the hidden passage, momentarily safe from both the creature and the worst of the toxic mist. Hyun smiled despite his watering eyes and burning lungs. Level designers always hide alternative routes. I noticed the patrol pattern of the monster left this section unwatched. That's usually a clue. They moved quickly through the passage, which sloped upward toward cleaner air. Behind them, they could hear the creature roaring in frustration, unable to follow through the narrow space. We're going to make it, Jin said, hope in her voice. For the first time. Just then, the passage began to shake. Dust and small rocks fell from above. Unstable path, Hyun called out. Run! They sprinted the last 20 meters as the passage began to collapse behind them. With a final lunge, they burst through the exit into another white room. The door sealing shut just as the passage caved in completely. Both lay on the floor, coughing and gasping for air as cleaning systems in the new room filtered out the toxic residue. Level. Cleared, Hyun wheezed, raising a weak fist in triumph. He used our failure condition as his success path, Dory said, her voice filled with wonder. The emergency escape route was supposed to trigger only if the test became lethal. How did he know? Tae asked. He didn't know, Dory replied. He sensed it, the same way he senses patterns in games. She turned to face her assistant. Do you understand what this means? What we consider intelligent problem-solving, humans have turned into a form of play. They practice these skills constantly through their games. Is that why their species advances so quickly despite their physical limitations? Tae wondered. Perhaps. Dory turned back to the screen, where Hyun was now helping Jin to her feet, checking her for injuries with genuine concern. They find joy in overcoming obstacles that would break other species. Should we stop the tests? Tae asked. We've learned enough about their capabilities. Dory was silent for a long moment. No, she finally said. But I want to try something different. A test of his understanding, not just his resilience. Her fingers moved across the control panel, programming a new scenario. What are you doing? Tae asked, looking concerned. If he believes this is a game, Dory explained, then let's see what happens when he loses. In the white room, Hyun and Jin had recovered from their ordeal. Hyun was examining a small burn on his arm from the toxic mist. The damage effects are so realistic, he commented. I wonder what engine they're using for this. Jin was watching him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. You saved my life back there, and you still think this is just some game? Hyun nodded. An amazingly immersive one. The developers should be proud. Before Jin could respond, the room around them flickered, like a video with poor connection. Then everything went black. When light returned, Hyun found himself alone in the room. Jin was gone. Hello? He called out. Did the NPC get removed for the next level? The voice spoke again, but this time it sounded different. Less automatic, more personal. Human subject, 7K39, it said. You have performed beyond expected parameters. Now we will test your response to failure. The floor beneath Hyun suddenly disappeared, and he fell into darkness. Hyun fell through darkness for what seemed like forever. Then suddenly he landed on something soft. Lights came on slowly, revealing a familiar place. He was in his own apartment in Seoul. The computer was on, his gaming chair positioned just as he had left it. Outside the window, the city lights glowed in the night sky. "Whoa," Hyun said, looking around in amazement. "Home environment level? The detail is incredible." He walked around his apartment, touching his belongings. Everything felt real. His coffee mug with the chip on the handle, the worn spot on his keyboard, even the slightly sticky power button on his monitor. "This must be using my own memories to create the simulation," he murmured appreciatively. Next level immersion. The computer screen flickered to life. On it was a video call window, showing his parents' faces. "Hyun?" his mother called. "Can you hear us? We've been trying to reach you for days." Hyun smiled. The NPC dialogue was getting more personal now. Using family members was a clever touch. "Hi, Mom, Dad," he replied, playing along. "Sorry I didn't call. I've been busy with a new game." His father frowned. "Game? Son, there's something serious happening. Turn on the news." Curious about where this storyline was going, Hyun picked up the remote and turned on his TV. What he saw made him freeze. The news showed scenes of destruction, buildings collapsing, people running in panic, strange ships hovering in the sky. "Breaking news," the announcer said. "The alien invasion continues for the third day. Major cities around the world are reporting massive casualties. Citizens are advised to seek underground shelter immediately." Hyun stared at the screen. "Wow, this game has an epic storyline." His parents looked desperate. "Hyun, this isn't a game. The aliens who took you, they're attacking Earth. You need to escape and come home before—" The video call cut off suddenly. The TV screen showed live footage of Seoul, with alien ships firing energy beams into the city. One beam hit near his parents' neighborhood. "Mom? Dad?" Hyun called, a hint of real concern in his voice for the first time. The simulation was so realistic it was triggering actual emotional responses. In the control room, Dory watched Hyun's biological readings with intense focus. "His stress hormones are finally elevating," she noted. "The reality shatter protocol is working." Tae looked uncomfortable. "This simulation is forbidden for most species. It causes severe psychological trauma." "I've calibrated it carefully," Dory assured him. "We're not trying to break him permanently, just break through his game mindset." "Senior researcher Yule won't approve of this," Tae warned. "These tests exceed our authorization." As if summoned by his name, the laboratory door slid open. A tall Kazan with deep blue markings entered, his posture rigid with authority. "Lead researcher Dory," he said coldly. "I've been reviewing your test protocols from my ship. You've exceeded parameters." Dory stood respectfully. "Senior researcher, Yule, I can explain. This human subject displays unprecedented—" "I've seen the data," Yule interrupted. "That's why I'm here. The High Council is concerned about your methods, but more concerned about these results." He gestured to the screen showing Hyun, who was now trying to call his parents back. "This human's resistance to our testing is disturbing." "Not resistance," Dory corrected eagerly. "Reinterpretation. He believes our tests are a form of entertainment, a game, as humans call it." Yule's eyes narrowed. "That's even more concerning. A species that treats pain and fear as entertainment could be extraordinarily dangerous if provoked." Back in the simulation, Hyun was beginning to feel uneasy. The scenario had taken a dark turn. The game designers were really pushing the emotional impact. He tried the door to his apartment, but it was locked. When he looked out the window again, the city was in flames. The sound of screams and explosions filled the air. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Jin's name. "Jin?" he answered. "How did you get my number?" "Hyun." Her voice was frantic. "They've connected our minds somehow. I can see your thoughts. This isn't a game. It never was." The Kazan are studying us, testing our limits before they decide whether to invade Earth. Kazan? Hyun repeated. Is that the name of the alien race in this storyline? Jin made a sound of frustration. Look at your arm. The burn from the toxic mist, it's still there, isn't it? Would a game do that? Hyun glanced at his arm. The burn was indeed still there, red and painful. Advanced haptic feedback, he said, but with slightly less certainty. Very convincing. They're showing you what will happen if you don't help us. Your world will end. Please, Hyun. The call cut off as another explosion rocked the building. The walls of his apartment began to crack. Impressive destruction physics, Hyun commented, though his voice wavered slightly. The TV switched on by itself, showing scenes from around the world. The Eiffel Tower collapsing, the Golden Gate Bridge, falling into the bay, massive ships hovering over every major city. Then the scene changed to his parents' home. It was in ruins, flames consuming what remained. For the first time, Hyun felt a chill that had nothing to do with appreciation for the game design. His cognitive dissonance is growing, Dory observed. The simulation is challenging his game framework. Yul studied the readings. Increase the personal stakes. Show him his own death. Tae looked alarmed. Sir, that could cause permanent trauma. We need to know what happens when this human finally understands reality, Yul said firmly. For the safety of all Kazan. Dory hesitated, then nodded. Initiating death scenario. The apartment began to collapse around Hyun. He tried to reach the door, but debris blocked his path. Smoke filled the room, making it hard to breathe. Okay, this is getting intense, he coughed. Great immersion, but maybe tone it down a bit? Through the broken window, he saw an alien ship hovering directly outside. A weapon on its underside began to glow. Hyun, Jin's voice came from somewhere. It's not real. The destruction, your apartment, it's all a simulation. But what they're showing you will happen if their invasion succeeds. A beam of energy shot through the window, hitting Hyun directly in the chest. The pain was shocking, far beyond anything he had experienced in the tests before. He fell to his knees, gasping. This can't be part of the game. It's not a game, Jin's voice insisted. It never was. But you can save everyone if you help us. Look for the glitches. Find the way out. As Hyun's vision began to fade, he noticed something strange. In the corner of the room, the flames weren't moving naturally. They seemed to repeat a pattern every few seconds. Rendering loop, he whispered. Animation shortcut. Looking around with new awareness, he began to see other inconsistencies. Textures that didn't quite match, shadows that fell at impossible angles, sounds that didn't sync perfectly with their sources. The simulation, he said, understanding, dawning. It's not perfect. With his gamer's eye for detail, the same skills that helped him spot patterns and exploits in games, Hyun began to see the framework of the simulation itself, and once he could see it, he could hack it. Alarms blared. In the control room. Screens flashed with warning messages. What's happening? Yul demanded. Impossible, Tae whispered, staring at the displays. He's found the pattern harmonics in the neural interface. He's creating feedback loops in the simulation code. Shut it down, Yul ordered. Dory's fingers flew across her control panel. I can't. He's somehow locked us out of the emergency protocols. On the main screen, they watched as Hyun, despite appearing to be dying in the simulation, had a look of intense concentration on his face. His eyes moved rapidly, as if reading invisible text. He's treating our neural interface like a game interface, Dory realized. He's looking for the exit command. Inside the simulation, Hyun had stopped trying to escape the collapsing building. Instead, he focused on the patterns behind the simulation itself. It reminded him of finding exploits in poorly coded games, looking for seams in the world design, for repeated patterns that revealed lazy programming. There, he whispered, spotting a flicker in the air where the simulation wasn't rendering properly. He reached toward it with both his hand and his mind. The world around him stuttered. Like a video with dropping frames. Then everything froze. Command prompt, Hyun said clearly, using the universal gamer's instinct for accessing debug menus. Exit simulation. The apartment, the destruction, the pain, everything shattered like glass. Hyun found himself back in the white testing chamber, connected to various monitoring devices, and this time he knew it was real. Across the room, a panel slid open. Instead of another test area, it revealed a glimpse of the control room beyond. Hyun could see 3 aliens staring at him in what looked like shock, even on their inhuman faces. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Hyun smiled. "So," he said, "this is the real game, and I just found the developer room." "Code breach," Tae shouted. "The human has accessed our systems." "Impossible," Yul insisted. "Our interfaces are designed to be one way only." "Not for someone who treated them like a game hack," Dory said quietly, a hint of admiration in her voice. "He didn't just survive our tests, he's learned from them, adapted." The laboratory door slid shut suddenly, security protocols engaging automatically. "He's in our basic ship systems now," Tae reported, panic in his voice. "How is this possible?" "Because," Dory said, watching as Hyun removed the monitoring devices from his body and stood up. "Humans don't just play games, they master them." On the screen, they watched as Hyun walked confidently toward. Hyun walked slowly toward the 3 aliens, studying them with intense curiosity. They were taller than humans, with slender bodies and 6-fingered hands. Their skin was pale blue with darker markings, and their large eyes watched him with what looked like alarm. "So," Hyun said, leaning against the doorframe of the control room, "you're the developers, huh?" The tallest alien with the most elaborate markings spoke sharply in a language Hyun couldn't understand. The others rushed to their control panels. "Security. Protocols activated," a computerized voice announced. Red lights began flashing throughout the room. Hyun smiled. "Let me guess. You're trying to lock me out of the system? Too late for that." He wasn't actually sure if he still had access to their systems, but years of gaming had taught him a valuable lesson. Confidence often works as well as skill. Plus, he had seen enough of their technology now to have some ideas about how it worked. "Yurdi, simulation training programs have very similar code structures to Earth video games," he continued, stepping fully into the control room. "Once I recognized the patterns, it wasn't hard to spot the backdoor commands." Dory couldn't believe what was happening. The test subject was not just free. He was acting like he understood their technology. How is he bypassing the language barrier? Tae whispered. "The neural interface we used for the simulations," Dory realized. It was bilateral after all. He must have absorbed linguistic structures while connected. Senior researcher Yul moved toward a weapons panel on the wall. "This subject must be contained immediately. He represents a clear threat to ship security." Dory stepped between Yul and the panel. "Wait, he's not showing aggression. This is a first contact opportunity." "First contact?" Yul hissed. "We've been studying humans for decades. This isn't first contact. It's a security breach." Hyun watched the aliens argue, picking up fragments of meaning from their tones and gestures. The female alien, at least he thought she was female, seemed to be defending him. "Look," Hyun said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I know this isn't a game anymore, but I'm not angry. Actually, I'm impressed. Your tests were amazing, better than any VR experience we have on Earth." The female alien turned to him, surprise evident even on her alien features. "You're not seeking revenge?" she asked in halting, accented English. Hyun shook his head. "Why would I? From your perspective, you were just doing research, right? You didn't know humans experience games the way we do." Dory couldn't believe what she was hearing. By all logic, this human should be traumatized, enraged, desperate to escape or hurt them. Instead, he was complimenting their test design. "I am lead researcher Dory," she said carefully. "You were brought here as part of our species assessment program. We study other intelligent life to determine potential threats or alliances." "By testing their pain tolerance?" Hyun asked. "By testing their problem-solving under stress?" Dory corrected. "What we don't understand is why you treated it all as entertainment." Hyun laughed. "Because that's what humans do. We turn challenges into games. Games help us practice for real challenges in a safe environment." There was nothing safe about our tests, Tay interjected. The pain was real. The dangers were real. But the stakes weren't, Hyun replied. Or at least I didn't think they were. In games we can fail and try again. Learn from our mistakes without dying for real. Suddenly a loud alarm blared through the ship, different from the security alert before. System critical failure in core stabilizers, the computerized voice announced. Cascade failure imminent. Estimated time to ship-wide systems collapse. 10 minutes. Yul turned furiously to Hyun. What did you do to our ship? Hyun looked genuinely surprised. Nothing. I was only in the simulation systems, not your actual ship controls. Tay was checking the monitors frantically. It's not him. When the security protocols activated, they triggered a defensive lockdown. But something went wrong. The primary and backup systems are fighting each other. Dory pushed him aside, her fingers flying over the controls. The neural interface we used to connect with the human, it created a feedback loop in our main computer. The system is trying to protect itself from what it perceives as an intrusion, but it's attacking its own processes. Can you stop it? Yul demanded. Dory's face showed despair. Not from here. The emergency override is in the central computer chamber, but the security lockdown has sealed all the doors. No one can reach it in time. Hyun listened to their frantic conversation. Picking up enough to understand the situation was dire. The ship was going to destroy itself because of the security measures triggered by his escape. Wait, he said, an idea forming. The maintenance tunnels. Every good game level has maintenance access for developers. Your ship must have service tunnels for repairs, right? The alien stared at him. Yes, Dory said slowly. But they're too small for us to navigate quickly. And the computer won't recognize manual override commands now. Show me the ship layout, Hyun requested. I bet those tunnels look a lot like the maze from your first test. Dory hesitated only a moment before bringing up a holographic display of the ship. Sure enough, a network of maintenance tunnels ran throughout the vessel like a three-dimensional maze. I can do this, Hyun said confidently. Just tell me what I need to do when I reach the computer core. 8 minutes later, Hyun was crawling through a narrow tunnel, guided by Dory's voice through a communication device attached to his ear. The tunnels were hot, filled with humming machinery and blinking lights. You're approaching the central junction, Dory's voice said. The computer core is just beyond the red barrier. You'll need to bypass the emergency locks, just like level 1, Hyun muttered, remembering the pain maze. Look for the pattern. The security system had activated defensive measures. Sections of the tunnel walls glowed hot. Energy fields crackled across junctions, and maintenance. Robots moved through the passages like the Predator from the third test, but Hyun saw it all as game mechanics now. Timing his movements, finding safe paths, recognizing the patterns, it was what he had trained for his entire gaming life. When he reached the red barrier, he found a complex locking mechanism unlike anything on Earth. But after spending time in the alien simulation systems, he could recognize the basic principles. It's a rhythm lock, he told Dory, like a musical puzzle in an adventure game. With less than 2 minutes remaining, Hyun pressed the symbols in the sequence he had learned from watching Dory's 6-fingered hands move across her control panels. The barrier slid open. In the control room, Dory, Tae, and Yul watched through security cameras as Hyun reached the computer core, a massive crystalline structure pulsing with light. Now what? Hyun asked through the communicator. There's a manual reset port at the base, Dory explained. You need to insert the override key I gave you and hold it for 10 seconds while pressing the main control crystal. But the crystal is charged with protective energy, Tae warned. It will cause extreme pain to organic tissue. Hyun looked at the glowing crystal. Pain resistance challenge, huh? Final boss time. Without hesitation, he inserted the key and placed his hand on the crystal. Immediately, energy coursed through his body. The pain was excruciating, worse than anything in the tests. But he held, on counting slowly. 8, 9, 10. He gasped as the crystal suddenly went dark, then relit with a softer glow. System reset complete, the computerized voice announced, all functions returning to normal operation. When Hyun returned to the control room, limping and exhausted but smiling, He found the three aliens waiting for him. Even Yule seemed impressed. You saved our ship, Dory said. Why would you help us after what we did to you? Hyun shrugged. In the best games, you often end up helping the characters who were initially your enemies. Makes for a better story. Your species is not what we expected, Yule admitted reluctantly. So, what happens now? Hyun asked. More tests? Dory shook her head. No. The High Council will need to completely reconsider our approach to humans. What we designed as torture you experienced as a challenge to overcome. What does that say about humanity's potential? It says we'd make better allies than enemies, Hyun suggested with a smile. 2 weeks later, Hyun was back in his apartment in Seoul, sitting at his computer. The aliens had returned him exactly to the moment he had been taken, as if no time had passed. Only the small burn scar on his arm proved it hadn't all been a dream. His phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. Ready for the sequel? D on his desk was a small device he had never seen before. Sleek, alien, definitely not human technology. When he touched it, it projected a holographic interface into the air in front of him. New game detected, the interface announced. Kazan Academy Training Program. Difficulty level, Expert. Begin? Hyun smiled as he selected, Yes. In space, orbiting quietly beyond Earth's detection systems, a Kazan research vessel received the connection signal. In the ship's main laboratory, Dory looked up from her work and smiled. He's in, she told Tae. The first human Kazan collaborative training program has begun. Do you really think humans can help improve our training? Tae asked skeptically. Without a doubt, Dory replied. They turned our torture into their entertainment. Imagine what our two species could accomplish together. On a screen behind her, Hyun's vital signs displayed alongside his game performance metrics. The Kazan had